the Vietnam War was a treasure trove for the arts. From it stemmed so much top-tier music, literature, cinematography, theatre work. All these facets of creativity were just boomed during this period, and from the experiences these people had from it. And every war and conflict has had some form of influence aspectually on creativity, but none to the extent and to the mainstream success as Vietnam content. I think it was mainly because Vietnam was the first modern war with these sort of exposure. Everyone was seeing what was going on in Vietnam week by week, compared to World War II, where no one really heard, and then in World War One, no one knew what was going on. It's the transparency allowed people to be reflective on what was going on, and thus creative about what was going on. But there was also the huge opposition to Vietnam. The student protests. People. The stop the bombs going on, the hippie movement, New Age, everything that was going on in opposition to the Vietnam. The anti-political reasons. That gave a motive for creating. Yes, World War was highly condemned. No one was really highly anti-World War at the time. Yes, there was conscientious objectors, but they were just seen as a point of morality less than an actual point of policy. So there was a motive to create. You had things like Johnny Got His Gun, which was created to show people the horrors of war, and you had Fortunate Son to take the mick out of the political leaders in charge, and you had Phil Oakes, who were there to completely and utterly condemn the goings on, and so on and so on and so on. These poets, these producers who were using it as it is the best transmission, and using it as a way to show people what was going on and how to condemn it. And I think that's one very large reason as to why there was this booming creativity for people to advocate against. But also I think another reason was Vietnam was, in terms of trauma, one of the strongest contenders in modern history for mass producers of people with post-traumatic stress disorders. It's hazy if it's one or many. And it was so, over the top with the war, and so fast-paced, that content was needed to be created to process it. People couldn't understand what was going on in the moment, because no one was on every battlefield. Vietnam was so much more splintered than any war before, and so much more unorganized and disheveled, No one could get the full picture. No one could step back and look and accurately describe the war as it was. There was too much darkness, too much shadow, too much haze, too much shade. So these contents were created to sort of process, sometimes directly what was going on, but also not directly, just kind of to have something easily understandable in the face of a completely uncertain, ununderstandable scenario. You want to be able to, when you have nothing you can grasp, you want to have something you can just hold in your hands and have perfectly fine. It's a coping mechanism. So those are really the two things I think that caused this boom. A coping mechanism and an opposition point. Because in World War One and Two, it was very strategic, very simple, as in you shoot from here to there. It was orchestrated, and people knew what was going on. Whereas Vietnam, you were thrown in the jungle, you didn't know where the enemy was, you didn't know who your next enemy was, you didn't even know who the enemy was, and it was such a shit show of human error. But it caused some of these great examples of human creativity, and I think it is down to how terrible the thing was that people wanted it to stop and wanted to show how terrible it was, but also the fact that no one knew what was going on, that they stemmed this process that was to take real life as it was and put it into some form of media, so they could take that in, because what they actually had wasn't intakeable. It was too mash up for them.